Ms. Royal, do you know how much the average person in this country who survives on Social Security, one of our seniors who's worked their entire life, about how much they have to survive on a day?
I do not.
$65 a day. We're not looking into Elon Musk's $8 million a day. This subcommittee, chaired by Marjorie Taylor Greene and the House Republicans, is looking into your grandmother's $65 a day. Let me be clear. I think we would all support taxpayer savings. Look into money we might needlessly send to billionaires and big corporations, find taxpayer savings, and send it back to your hardworking family. But instead, what House Republicans and the Trump-Musk administration want to do is they want to look into your kids' lunch money, your kids' teacher's salary, into your grandparents' Social Security. They want to take that money and give it out in billionaire tax cuts, and they're talking about that in committee tomorrow. I'm going to do something that I've never done in a congressional hearing before, and that is plead for help from the American people, plead for help from my Republican colleagues on something that we actually all agree on, because lives are at stake right now. I'll ask you, Mr. Kerkorian, and I know you're a Project 2025 board member, your recent quote from a few years ago where you said, quote, Haiti is so screwed up because it wasn't colonized long enough, end quote. Is that correct? Did you say that?
I'm happy to talk about that all you want.
You did say it, that's right?
I wrote it, yes.
You said that. Haiti was colonized as a slave plantation colony. The French colonized Haiti so that slaves would work on plantations. The end of colonization in Haiti was so that the people there would no longer be slaves. So what you're saying, and I read your quote, and anybody watching this online should go read it. What you're saying is it would have been good if they'd stayed colonized, which means that it would have been good if they had stayed enslaved by the French.
In the long run, it's one of the
in the long run,
history. No,
people shouldn't have been enslaved a single day. I'm reclaiming my time, Chairman.
And they had every right. They had every right to throw the
What
French
you said
out.
is that
My
you would have
point
wanted
is,
them. Reclaiming my time. I'm talking now.
They would have been freed
You
30
said
years later,
you said-
and they would have been in the same situation.
You're saying you wanted 30 more years of slavery in Haiti. Reclaiming
No, I
my
did
time.
not. I did
You
not.
just said
I
it.
do not
Honestly,
want that.
it adds up. You said that they would have benefited from the French influence.
In
the
the
French
long
were
run,
the ones.
like the people in Martinique and
Reclaiming my time, Mr. Chairman. I'd like my time back. Please, Mr. Chairman, my time. This is my time, Mr. Kerkorian.
They are much better off.
Honestly,
now
this
than
all
Haiti
starts
was.
to add up. This all starts to add up. You continue to do this, disseminate writings of white nationalists, try to rationalize, for example, Haiti being colonized for 30 more years. You're a Project 2025 board member. In Project 2025, I couldn't figure out why on page 583, it advocates for not allowing racial disparity or gender disparity to be considered discrimination legally anymore. In Project 2025, it eliminates a 50-year-old executive order that prohibits discrimination in federal jobs. On page 586, Project 2025 advocates for Donald Trump to allow businesses to discriminate based on religious beliefs. Before today, I couldn't understand why Trump's Project 2025 could advocate for ending civil rights protections. Why would Trump's Project 2025, I know there's crazy stuff in here, but I couldn't get why it would advocate for ending protections against discrimination. But now I understand. We have Project 2025 board members here who are the directors of groups that the Southern Poverty Law Center has designated as a hate group. We have people that are on the board that developed this who have said, for example, that Haitians would have been better off with more influence from their enslavers. Let me be clear. The right wing and these so-called Trump border policies have nothing to do with keeping people safe. This is about ripping families apart, arresting immigrants, and blaming someone for our problems so we can ignore the fact that Trump and these right-wing officials are grifters and that Trump is taking millions of dollars from foreign governments to enrich himself. His main policy achievement had nothing to do with the border or migration, but cutting taxes for the rich and the biggest corporations in this country. All the while, the collateral damage is kids being separated from their moms, people in cages, which we can't deny. Mr. Holman sitting here before us said at the CPAC convention, and I quote, he doesn't give a about that. And desperate people
That is a wrong
living
statement.
in the shadows,
That is a lie.
undocumented.
You just
while
said something that wasn't true.
legal
Mr. Chairman, would you
pathways-
please stop the witness from interrupting our members?
I like to deal in truth, and here's the truth about SNAP.
SNAP was intended to give hardworking Americans a second chance during difficult stretches in life. It was never intended to become a lifestyle, but rather a life vest. And in spite of this, the program has shifted from its original intentions and has continually grown. It now represents some 82% of the Farm Bill and will cost $1.2 trillion over 10 years. The truth is, SNAP has been plagued by overpayments and errors. SNAP's national overpayment rate is 9.84%, leading to more than 34 million in erroneous payments each day, $13.15 billion a year. This isn't really even factoring in the overpayments of less than $48, which is not factored in. Look, this is all aided by sugary drinks, which are the second most purchased items sold through SNAP, accounting for 5% of dollars SNAP recipients spend on food, costing between $2 and $4 billion each year. The truth is, as the number of SNAP recipients has grown, our healthiness levels have fallen here in America. I think that's shameful. This shows a definite need for changes to SNAP, to ensure solvency in the program, to curb the waste, the fraud, the abuse, to incentivize healthier choices, and to rein in our skyrocketing national debt of almost $35 trillion.
My distinguished colleagues on the other side of the aisle have mentioned overpayment when they are talking about food stamps and SNAP benefits, when really we should be asking about overpayment to many of these corporate CEOs. When folks have been talking about waste, fraud, or abuse and are talking about people who are just trying to get by and on food stamps, I would actually point to the waste, fraud, and abuse of corporate America, who are overwhelmingly starting to dominate our food systems and jacking up prices on consumers while underpaying their workers. Just take a look at the beef market, where we have 4 packing companies that now control 85% of the market. Those same companies that have been caught with children working in dangerous facilities are constantly underpaying their workers and have used their market power to not only ignore those basic labor laws, but to jack up prices on consumers.
The Equal Representation Act, passed out of this committee and by the House earlier this year, is critical to ensuring fairness in our electoral process. This legislation adds a straightforward citizenship question to the decennial census questionnaire to ensure accurate information. It also ensures that only U.S. citizens are counted for apportionment of congressional seats and electoral college votes. American citizens' federal representation should be determined by American citizens only. We must get this bill passed by Congress and signed into law.
I couldn't disagree more with this really kind of wild Republican idea of the so-called, quote-unquote, Equal Representation Act, which would only count certain people in this country in complete violation of the 14th Amendment, again, a post-Civil War amendment. I don't know anybody here that wants to go back to sort of pre-Civil War times or a pre-Civil War Constitution. My office, just like every office here, when somebody calls, you don't ask, hey, are you a citizen? You ask, are you a constituent? How can I help you? We need every single person counted. And in fact, if there is a citizenship question on the census, we then would be admitting that we want to undercount people, because all the data points to the idea that this undercounts people. And the point of the census is to follow the Constitution and count the number of people. It's not to figure out who's a citizen or a non-citizen. It's to find out by the Constitution how many people live in each state. Donald Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, received a staggering $2 billion from Saudi Arabia for his brand new private equity firm. And while Hunter Biden never had any say over U.S. policy, Mr. Kushner got this $2 billion 6 months after working in the White House as a senior advisor on Middle East policy. Mr. Kushner had no experience in private equity. In fact, he was so inexperienced that Saudi officials tried to block the transfer of the money until the Crown Prince overruled them. While working at the White House, Mr. Kushner pushed through a $110 billion weapons sale for Saudi Arabia. I'm finishing my point, and then I'm happy to talk about it. He then defended the deal in the wake of the Saudi government's murder of journalist Jamal Khashoggi. And while this may all just be a coincidence, there's many questions, like, was any of this money passed along to Trump? Was the Saudi money a thank you for a job well done in the White House? Was Jared given this money in exchange for anything else? Or did someone with no experience just have a lucky payday? These are questions we should have answers to. I'm going to start by describing the facts on the ground. Millions of people are at risk of dying of starvation in areas of the world where Democrats and Republicans have already agreed and committed to feeding them with American-grown food for humanitarian reasons and for global stability. But yesterday, I spoke with people in charge of warehouses in Sudan and Ethiopia, warehouses full of food, but because of Doge, that food is trapped in the warehouse out of reach of starving and dying moms and kids. In those two countries alone, 150,000 children and moms are at risk of dying this month if that food is not delivered from the warehouse to them right up the road. Everyone agrees that's not supposed to happen. Republicans voted for this food, and Democrats voted for this food to get out. Secretary of State Marco Rubio says the food should go out as part of his life-saving waiver. Doge Chairwoman Marjorie Taylor Greene started this hearing by saying that life-saving food programs should still be running. We have paid for the food, and we have shipped it, and it is sitting trapped in the warehouse because Doge is blocking the payments needed to get the food out to the people who need it. So here's what that means. It means that kids are dying, and more will die tomorrow, of severe acute malnutrition. If you want nightmares, just Google severe acute malnutrition and look at the photos. The way that healthcare workers determine if a kid is dying of this is they measure their bicep. And if their bicep is less than 4.5 inches around, then that means you could die of starvation tomorrow. Think of a kid's arm fitting through this hole. Think of your kid's arm fitting through this hole. These kids could die tomorrow. You've heard today about the waiver for life-saving humanitarian assistance, and all I'm asking is for Rubio's waiver to be made real. People watching at home, you can do something about this. I know many of these hearings are live on Fox News. I'm a Democrat. For many of the people watching, you may not agree with me on many issues, but I think we can all agree that this food needs to get out of the warehouse and to these kids. I've gotten phone calls from conservative friends, people of faith that moved to Africa to live out their faith of I was naked and you clothed me, I was hungry and you fed me, and they agree that this food should be given out. So call your Republican congressperson, call the White House, tell them you know they didn't mean to do this, but that this food needs to go out tomorrow. If you're in the press, cover this story. Ask questions about Ethiopia. Ask questions about Sudan. Tell the world about this. Mr. Chairman, the Republicans on this committee just voted no on canceling Elon Musk contracts if he violates the law and stays past 130 days. The Republicans on this committee just voted no on Mr. Frost's amendment that would require the President of the United States to follow U.S. Supreme Court orders. At some point, we've got to have some shame on this committee. So my amendment, I would hope my Republican colleagues would vote for it, is that if a court or the federal government finds that Mr. Musk abused his power to enrich himself here over the last few months, then we would cancel his contracts. If a court finds that the richest man on earth went in, used the federal books, scraped people's data, steered contracts to himself, then we should maybe stop sending him $8 million a day and save the American taxpayer $3 billion. That's the way that not just Democrats, but conservatives, progressives, independents, all across the country want to see us save some money by saying these corporate grifters that use the government to enrich themselves, they should get cut off. And look, there's a House Republican majority today, but there could be a Democratic majority tomorrow, or at least in under 2 years. And when we are sitting on this committee, and if we get a chance to have the subpoena power and look into this and find out that Elon Musk has used his power to enrich himself, the consequences could actually be much greater than just having his contracts cut off. So I ask my Republican colleagues, I know you voted no on Mr. Frost's amendments to say the president should follow the U.S. Supreme Court. I know you just voted no on my amendment that said if Mr. Musk stays over the 130 days, he should have his contracts canceled. At a minimum, I would ask that you vote for this amendment that says if Musk breaks the laws, if he says that if we find out from a court or from the federal government that he steered these contracts to himself, then we shouldn't keep on rewarding him with billions in taxpayer dollars. That's the way we should be saving the American taxpayer money, not by kicking kids off of Medicaid or pulling school meals or firing veterans. I yield back, Mr. Chairman, and I would hope that at least one Republican member of Congress would vote to say we will hold Mr. Musk accountable if he stays past the 130-day limit. We'll hold Mr. Musk accountable if a court finds that he's been funneling money to himself. The news is out that he's seeking this multi-billion-dollar contract for Trump's Golden Dome. The word is out that he's out there messing with the FAA, trying to get his Starlink contracts at the FAA. The word is out that he tried to get a $400 million contract just recently for Tesla at the State Department, and then he got caught doing it. So, look, you may not think it's going to come out today, but it will come out eventually, and it would have been better if you voted yes to say we're going to cut off Musk's contracts if he breaks the law, if he breaks the 130-day rule, if he breaks conflicts of interest, if he keeps on using his position to enrich himself. I yield back, Mr. Chairman.